The Predators finally know their playoff opponents for the first time since 2011. It's Preds versus Canucks in round one. We'll break down that matchup on today's Locked on Predators podcast.
You're Locked on Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked on Predators podcast your first listen of the day, every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we just want to start out with a special shout out to our loyal Locked on Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio who doesn't have a voice right now, so bear with me, folks. Oh, man, I am hopped up on Benadryl at the moment. I also have a partner in crime who is going to carry me through this episode.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I unfortunately am not hopped up on Benadryl, but we'll get you through this, Nick. Like a lot of nodding, a little, shoulder shrugging, and it's going to be great. I guess you won't be able to hear that if you listen to the audio version of the podcast, but people will understand. Yeah, you sound rough. Look great, you sound rough.
Do what?
You look great, but you sound rough.
Oh, that's the best description of me I could hope for at the moment. Thank you, Ann Kimmel. Always got my back.
I do.
Yeah. Hey, the Nashville Predators are in the postseason, and they finally know their opponent. A showdown with the Vancouver Canucks are in the works. Plus, we asked you guys to send in some questions about the postseason for our mailbag segment. We'll be reading some of your top comments, questions today, and responding to them. All that coming up on today's show. First, though, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and I am a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, and it is the Preds versus Canucks in round one. We talked about it earlier this week. It kind of seemed like this was the matchup the Nashville Predators were going to wind up getting. Just a couple of semantics in terms of teams locking up stuff over the past week or so. But yeah, for the second time in their respective histories, it is a showdown versus with these two teams, Ann.
Yeah, I think this is going to be interesting. I think if you had told people at the beginning of the season that Vancouver and Nashville were going to be in a playoff series together, I'm not sure people would have believed you. But I do think this is going to be a really interesting first round series, despite what we may be hearing from some Canucks pockets here and there. I think this could be a really interesting series between the Predators and Canucks. And like you said, only the second time they've met in the postseason. And I think there's a lot of potential for this to be a fun, possibly a little bit of spice in this showdown. I'm really excited for this. I think this is a good matchup for the Nashville Predators. I think it's going to be a great challenge for the Predators. I'm here for it. I'm ready for it to start, and it will start. We just got word game one will be Sunday, 9 p.m. Central start time. Let's talk about the downside of playing the Canucks, my friends. 9 p.m. time.
Well, I'm not going to be awake for the next day. Yeah, it's interesting, Ann, because I look at these two teams, and it's kind of the same story with different groups of players. And we kind of talked about this when we were talking about possible playoff opponents. But, the Canucks last year or years before that, great young core, but for whatever reason just couldn't find the right combination to put everything together.
Right.
And as a result, didn't make the playoffs. They switch coaches. Rick Tocchet brings in a new system. They finally get something going at the end of last year Some, players finally start to figure some things out. They fall just short of the playoffs, come in this year and hit the ground running hot. That young core is finally starting to, I guess, sort of lead with other good people in the background. Like they're finally getting some help. It's kind of the same way for the Nashville Predators, but with an older core.
True.
It's a little bit of a different situation. You had Josi, you had Forsberg, you had Juuse Saros these past few years. You just couldn't really find a combination of the rest of the team to A, bring out the best in those guys, and B, sort of get the Predators out of just sort of the mushy middle of the pack. This year, they have. They absolutely improve their offense. Their offense is doing gangbusters, one of the best offensive teams in the NHL. And, analytically speaking, they were kind of that way, but even before they hit that big, 18 game point streak. The goaltending has slowly started to get better as it went on. But the biggest thing for the Nashville Predators this year is that they finally have some help for those main guys. Ryan McDonough, the best year that he's had probably since his New York Rangers days, including the Tampa Bay Lightning in that. You look at people like Gustav Nyquist, who came from, a guy that a lot of people thought were damaged goods, having his career best season, 70 plus points for Gustav Nyquist. Nobody predicted that. You have Ryan O'Reilly with his best statistical season since he won the Cup in St. Louis. You have Luke Evangelista getting hot, Tommy Novak getting hot, Michael McCarron having a career year, Colton Sissons having a career year. You have all these guys that have just quietly under the radar stepped their game up. And it's kind of the same way for Vancouver too. They're finally getting some depth that they needed to supplant their big guns. So it's interesting, different groups of people, but similar stories for these two teams.
I think these teams mirror each other much more than what it appears on the surface for the reasons you're talking about. Again, I think their core is a little bit younger than Nashville's core, but you're finally seeing some pieces come together. It feels like Vancouver is maybe a little step further down the road for a long-term projected outcome than maybe Nashville, because Nashville's core is a little bit on the older edge. But look, that veteran experience, like you said, has been invaluable. Gustav Nyquist has been absolutely incredible. I was looking at some stats the other day, and if you look at players in the NHL between the ages of 30 and 34, Nyquist is 34 years old. There are only 3 players in the NHL who have more points that are between the ages of 30 and 34 than Gustav Nyquist: Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, and Roman Josi. This has just been such a resurgent year for Gustav Nyquist, for Ryan O'Reilly. And again, like you said, bringing up these young pieces as well. And I think part of what Nashville's success has been that bottom 6. Nobody's really talked too much about it. You talk about the big name players, but Nashville has kind of developed this very reliable, very clear identity for their bottom 6 players. And along with what you need them to do, they're doing some of what you want them to do with goal scoring and, being effective additions on things like the penalty kill. So a lot came together for Nashville. This Nashville team is not the same team that played Vancouver early in this season. Nashville played them twice in a week apart.
3 times.
3 times. They played them twice in October, a week apart.
Okay. Yeah.
And then once in mid-December. And I think if you are Vancouver and you're looking at those 3 games and you're formulating your game plan, you're not going to be ready for the Nashville Predators, because this is a very different Nashville team than the one that Vancouver saw their 3 games this season. Very different Predators team.
Yeah, and it's hard to judge anything from those, first 3 games. That first one fairly evenly matched, but the Canucks came out on top 3-2. That second one was 5-2 Vancouver, but the Predators outshot Vancouver. They had 3.39 expected goals to Vancouver's 1.54. It just was a night of bad goaltending, and then that Third one was, Vancouver wiped the floor with Nashville, but
True.
it's I don't know how much you can take from like going into this series looking back at those 3 games, because as you mentioned, it's a tale of two things, like two separate things.
Right.
Um, at December 19th, which was the last time these two played, the Predators ranked 15th in possession in the NHL Corsi 4. They were 16th at scoring. And since then, in the games from December 20th onward, Nashville is 5th in possession at Corsi 4. Vancouver is 7th, by the way. They are 9th in scoring. Vancouver is 15th. And they are 7th in expected goals. And Vancouver is 12th. They're also 8th in high danger chances. Vancouver is actually higher. I think they're 5th in that. But that just goes to tell you that this has kind of been a completely different Nashville Predators team that has, sort of taken the reins here since the last time these two played. Nashville's kind of been on a slow but steady upward trajectory. And look, I heard some chatter from Canucks fans. I've heard some chatter from our lovely colleagues at Locked On Canucks. There's a lot of people looking at those 3 games and thinking this is going to be a cakewalk.
Yes,
There's a lot of people out there that said that, they would be surprised if this went longer than 5 games. I'm just telling you, folks, like, overlook this Predators team at your own risk, because this is not that same team that you played 3 times back at the start of the year. This is a completely different team. And if you don't recognize that, you could wind up the way of the 2017 Chicago Blackhawks, because they wiped the floor with Nashville that year during the regular season too. And then look what happened.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, if you don't take a long, hard look at where the Predators finished the season, you don't know how the Nashville Predators play.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. Let's get to some questions about the playoffs. And we have a couple of mailbag submissions that we want to go to. We will ask you guys for your thoughts on the playoffs and answer any questions you might have coming up here in just 1 second. First, though, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Policy Genius. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting as soon as you sign up. Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts and are on hand to walk you through every step of the way. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step, and they will give you tools to easily compare quotes for America's top insurers in just a few clicks so you can find your lowest price. Your work life insurance may not offer enough protection for your family's needs, and even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. That's where Policy Genius comes in handy, because they give you unbiased advice from licensed expert support team, and they have no incentive to recommend one insurer over the other, so you can trust their guidance and make the best fit for your family and your needs. So check life insurance off of your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in our description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. Again, policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. All right, and before we get to the mailbag, can we talk about the dumbest piece of discourse that has already started between Preds fans and Canucks fans?
I know exactly what it is, but
the regional ticket sale snafu. It feels like every year people are outraged by this, and when I say every year, shouldn't that be your clue that this happens in a lot of different places?
Yes.
The Carolina Hurricanes are doing that this year, but for some reason, nobody talks about the Hurricanes doing it. The San Francisco 49ers and LA Rams did that in their playoffs in recent years. Nobody seems to get on them, but it's Nashville, it's a regional market, and all of a sudden it's like, they're worried about other teams taking over the building. This is so weak. They don't want teams to travel here. And it's like, do you guys not watch effing sports or follow sports at all?
Ever?
Like this happens every year. Like multiple teams in the NHL have done this. I think Tampa has done this in the past. Like it's not a new thing, but because it's Nashville, it's sort of become look what the Nashville Predators are doing to opposing fans. Every franchise does this. Like a lot of franchises do this. And it's like this stupid banner thing. Like, yes. Do you know how many times I'll go to a visiting arena and see like so-and-so division champions, like 50 of those banners in a row, but it's always Nashville.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just getting old and stupid.
You know what I think that it is, and this is just my own take on it. I think part of it is because Nashville is such a destination city. People want to come here and they're like, oh, we're going to come for the Stanley Cup playoffs and we're going to go to Broadway and we're going to go to Kid Rock's bar and we're going to throw chairs off the roof at Tootsie's and it's going to be so amazing.
Morgan Wallen, a Canucks fan, confirmed.
But you know what? Every team had your chance to invade Nashville and show up in the regular season. And you know what? So many of you did. And quite frankly, like, welcome. We're a lovely bunch. We're glad to have you, as long as you're not on a pedal tavern. But quit your squawking. You know what? These playoffs, these are ours. And quite frankly, there just aren't enough tickets to go around because Nashville Predators fans, there's a ton of them and they all want to go. So look, sorry that you might have to drink a beer in some city that isn't as cool as ours. I'm just going to need you to bear up under it and watch it on TV. And I'm with you. It's like it's a surprise every year. It's not a surprise. It's not just a Nashville thing. Tons of teams, like you said, Carolina does this. The difference is people don't want to vacation that much in Raleigh. You know, they want to come to Nashville. And look, I'm sorry, come some other time. But right now we're busy. We're busy and there's just not room for you. Bless.
Yeah. We are now going to get hate mail from both the Vancouver Canucks fan base and the city of Raleigh.
Well, look, I will say this. Raleigh is a lovely city. My niece goes to school there and it's a lovely city. But you know what I'm saying? Like when you're talking about destination cities and people are like, you know where I want to go? They usually say Nashville before they say Raleigh. Usually. Yeah. Just saying. And Canucks fans, welcome. Come during the regular season. We'd love to have you. I'd buy you a beer. But this is our time now. So
shout out Durham, North Carolina.
Great.
Just got to throw that out there. Amazing city.
Great city.
This has nothing to do with what we're talking about at this point. So, Anne, let's move on to some questions about the playoffs. We asked you for some mailbag questions, and you guys sent us some good topics, whether they're questions, whether they're just comments on things going on right now. So, Anne, let's dive into our mailbag and pick a topic.
All right. You know what? If you want me to, I can read the questions because I know.
For the love of God, yes. Any chance that I have to talk less?
I was going to say, let me just read the questions because I feel like you're not. We just are not going to get you through this. We got to carry you through.
This is why we're partners in crime.
That's right. So there's other reasons, but that has Anyway, our first question comes from one of our loyal Locked On Pred heads. Did you get Barry Trotz? Fantastic name. Wants to know, what is the biggest issue for the Preds outside of mistakes and finishing? Those are the two main ones, I'd say. What are the biggest issues for the Preds?
For me, I think it's just consistent defense in front of Juuse Saros.
Let's go.
In the middle of the season, especially when the Predators got hot, that was their strongest suit, was that the defense was really limiting the looks that other teams got on Juuse Saros. We saw endless clips from the Preds defense, whether it's Roman Josi, whether it's Jeremy Lauzon, whether it was a forward like Colton Sissons or Cole Smith coming back into the play to break up a high danger chance. A lot of plays like those. And when you go back and look at this 18-game point streak the Predators had, the Preds would have like 35, 40 shots, and the other team would have like 20 or 25. They were really just limiting looks. In this, when the Predators haven't done well this season, I feel like it's the opposite. And that's kind of been the biggest impetus for where the Predators struggle, is they make it really easy to get good traffic on, the Preds goaltender. And that's not something that you're going to be able to do against a team that has Elias Pettersson or Quinn Hughes or Brock Besser or JT Miller on it, because they will capitalize and, make you pay if you make the slightest mistake. So for me, that's kind of my biggest, I don't want to say like issue. I think is just maybe the thing that I really want the Predators to watch out for.
Yeah, the hitch in their giddy up, as we like to say. That was actually one of mine. The other one for me is turnovers in the defensive zone.
Right.
Because it results in that same thing you're talking about, where, the Predators are trying to exit the zone and they're just not on top of their passes. And you end up with somebody with the puck on their stick in the slot, wide open in front of Juuse Saros. And so many times those zone exits have really been a problem for Nashville, and they just lead to such quick goals. Did it in games against Vancouver. In those 3 games, we saw some of that. So for me, it's, sort of that defensive structure, like you're talking about, in front of Saros, and then just smart zone exits, not turning the puck over in the defensive zone. The other thing I will say that I hope that we don't see happen, that I think if it does happen could be a problem for the Predators, is sometimes the Predators get too fancy. They do too much. They do like, ooh, extra pass. Ooh, keep it simple, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, guys. Like, just keep it simple. You don't have to do more or fancier in the playoffs. You just have to do better. So that's something that I'm kind of watching for. Yeah.
Let's actually, let's take a break and then come back and do some more mailbag questions.
All right. I think that sounds like a great plan. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. Look, here's what's real about me. I have not always been a competitive person. I just want everyone to have fun. Lately, though, some of this discourse over this Predators first round matchup is stirring up the competitive warrior in me, but so is playing Monopoly Go. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of this game. It has been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part, messing with your friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. But now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself, partners in crime. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. I want it to be me, friends. But hey, it's not just that competitive side in me that loves it. You can also make sure everyone has fun and team up with friends and with people from all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now. It's free on the App Store or Google Play.
All right, Anne, let's drop another mailbag question.
All right. This is a great question. It's something I've really been thinking about, and I know we'll get talked about more after the postseason or after the playoffs. But Catherine, Meg's daughter, 24, curious about Sherwood's contract situation. Also, how does the team's win-loss record compare when he's in the lineup to when he was injured or a healthy scratch? I'm not his agent, but might volunteer to be. I think we will pass that information on in case maybe he feels like the agent isn't doing enough. So Kiefer Sherwood, 68 games played this season, 10 goals, 17 assists, 27 points. Also want to mention he's a plus 17, which I think is worth mentioning. I know, plus minus, but it's worth mentioning. Went back through and looked at the schedule, looked at Sherwood's games. The Predators are 6-6-2 when Sherwood is not in the lineup. He did play 2 of the 3 Vancouver games, just filing that away. And just a little bit of trivia, Sherwood was not in that 9-2 Dallas fiasco, but he did play in all of those 18 games in that consecutive point streak. Also been a big penalty killer. He is currently on the last year of a 1-year 775 contract. Interestingly, Cole Smith and Michael McCarron, his line mates on that 4th line, they have gotten their extensions. So far, Kiefer Sherwood has not. So I think this is a great question. I think it's something a lot of people are going to be looking at. For me, Nick, there's a couple. I go a couple ways with this Kiefer Sherwood situation. I wonder if the Predators haven't signed him yet because they think maybe there could be some competition for his position, maybe coming up through the ranks. And when I say that, I'm thinking of somebody like maybe Zachary Leroux.
That's exactly who kind of I'm thinking of too. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Igor Afanasyev. But here's the caveat to that. Here's the caveat to that. Zachary Leroux, can't wait to see him in the NHL, plays that physical sandpaper, game that you really like that would go well with that 4th line. But I don't know that he has the speed. And that is Sherwood's secret sauce. Kiefer Sherwood is freaking fast. And I wonder if they feel like they can replace that. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Kiefer Sherwood. They have not signed him yet. I wonder if they will. Here's what I will say. If Sherwood is not signed with the Predators, there are going to be other NHL teams that are going to be sniffing around Kiefer Sherwood, I think, after his season. So,
yeah, he's certainly earned a look this year. And who is the next mailbag question from?
All right. Our next mailbag question is from X Fresh at LSC4M. I know that must stand for something cool, but I don't know what it is. If Yaroslav was to come up next season, who would be the better goalie partner between Lankinen and Saros, and how do we expect him to perform at the NHL level?
It seems like, if I'm reading the Predators correctly, it seems like they really want a season of Yaroslav Askarov and Juuse Saros together. That may be complicated because Barry Trotz also said, hey, he's opening to listen to offers for Juuse Saros again this summer.
Yeah.
But I think it would benefit him more to play with somebody like Saros. Number one, Kevin Lankinen as an amazing goaltender, but to have somebody like Saros, face of the franchise, your franchise goalie, have him with, who's the person some people think is his heir apparent, you're going to get maybe a little bit more, I guess, sort of secondhand experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, the only concern I can think of in that situation is you're going to want to play Juuse Saros most of the games, like at least 65% of the starts. And is that going to be enough for you to get a really good look at Askarov? I do think the Predators want a look at him as the backup next year. But maybe, as a backup with maybe a little bit more playing time than what Lankinen got this year.
Right. I agree. Do you want to hear my hot goaltending take? And I don't know that I'm right, but I'll tell you, this is what I think of it. These are the things I think about. My hot take is Saros's future with the franchise is going to be decided or going to be influenced by, not decided by, but influenced by this playoff series, and not based on his performance, but I think on the team in front of him. Because I think if Barry Trotz sees a team that's like, hey, you know what, we still need 2 to 3 years in front of our goaltender to get the deep cup run, then I wonder if he doesn't move Saros and then splits, like you're talking about, splits more time between Lankinen and Askarov. That's what I'm wondering about.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think this season, how this first round matchup goes and how far the Predators get if they move past Vancouver is going to have a lot of play on what Trotz does this offseason.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to the next question, Anne.
All right. Do you think, this is from Arlene 917, do you think the team being on the younger side will affect their ability to play at their best in the postseason, even after that 18-game point streak? This is a great question. I think a lot of people are asking this question, wondering about this.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Anne? Because at the same time, this Vancouver Canucks core, they've only been to the playoffs once, and that was back in the COVID 2020 year.
That's
so
true.
It's not like they're just brimming with experience either.
Mm-hmm. I think it could go one of two ways. A, worst case scenario, it just feels too big and these younger players don't perform well, and you've got to have good performances from the younger players. But I also think some of these younger players may flourish. You've got Luke Evangelista. Luke Evangelista is growing into that big moment guy. Like, he is all sorts of YOLO. Like, he is here for that. Tommy Novak is the most unflappable person. He just does not seem to get super flummoxed in moments. Cole Smith just pretty much has 0 Fs to give. This will be some of his first experience in the postseason. He's going to do his thing. He's going to not care about Jack. Spencer Stastny. I think about Spencer Stastny and I'm like, I would take a nervous Spencer Stastny over most any experienced NHL defenseman in the league. So that one doesn't worry me. Kevin Lankinen, look, if Kevin Lankinen does end up seeing some time, Kevin Lankinen just is brimming with confidence. So I do think that a lot of the inexperienced players actually are in a good place to go into the playoffs, and they're embracing it. We're going to have to watch if there's a young player who maybe has a turnover that leads to a goal. Okay, what's the next couple of shifts look like? They're going to have to just still be able to make that quick mental pivot like they have in the regular season. But I will say, I don't expect their lack of experience to be a huge factor in the game. I really just don't. When you look at them individually, I just think they're going to be all right.
It's both teams have some key players who have never really been in a playoff run before,
right?
Or at least a normal one.
Yes.
And both teams also have players who have been brought in to their respective teams specifically to bring some of that Stanley Cup experience in. So to me, it's kind of the X factor, Anne, is just like which team kind of adjusts first. Like which team can kind of get that this is playoff hockey, it's different than regular hockey sort of NHL lesson out of the way first.
Right.
And I think that whichever team does that, whichever team kind of figures out the speed, pace, and physicality of playoff hockey first, that's going to be the team that I think is going to have an advantage in the series.
I like that. Do we have time, you think, for one more quick one?
We have time for one more. Let's do it.
All right. At Barry Neal, 1990. That was a good year, 1990. If we don't advance to round 2, will it be a disappointment? Do you even remember 1990?
I was 1.
Oh, okay. I was a junior in high school. If we don't advance to round 2, will it be a disappointment for the Nashville Predators?
That's tough.
That's a tough one.
Because here's the thing. If you had asked me that at the beginning of the series, like the beginning of the season, or even like back in December, I would have said absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because if this team, like this particular team, the hodgepodge team with 0 offense and a bunch of old people, you would tell me this team is getting to the playoffs, that they're going to go on a big second half run, figure some things out, get to the postseason, that's a disappointment to you? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think for me is like if it doesn't happen this year, like if the Preds peter out in the first round again, now that we've seen sort of how the season has unfolded, my big question is, when does this core get another chance? It's hard to forget that, Roman Josi turns 35 next year. Filip Forsberg is about to be on the other side of 30. Who knows if we're going to get this good of a season from Ryan McDonagh again. We didn't think we would see a season this good, when we traded for him. Same for Gustav Nyquist. Who knows what the Predators are going to do with Juuse Saros. So for me, it's if this team, the way they are right now, isn't good enough to get it done, and changes are going to have to be made, then it's like, man, did the Predators waste an opportunity to have some of their most talented people all at once on their best years? Did they let an opportunity like that go?
For me, it's not going to be about results. It's not going to be about, did they make it to the second round or did they not? For me, the disappointment will come in how they do or don't play. So for me, if this team stays competitive with Vancouver, I won't be disappointed if they don't make it. For me, it's about, how do they perform? Do they continue to mature through the postseason? Do they handle the big moments well? Do they make adjustments? Do they keep their composure? Do they learn as they're going through this postseason experience? The disappointment for me will come if the stage is too big for this team, and if they sort of collapse, under silly mistakes or the pressure, or if they grip the sticks too tight or leave sorrow. Like, the performance is what will be disappointing to me, not the result. Because again, I'm with you. If we had said on the podcast in December, hey, we're going to be disappointed if they don't make it to the second round, they'd be like, they're drinking the fireball again. And, fair enough, we may have been, but this time we're not. So for me, it's about, the disappointment will be about how they perform. Like, if they don't win the series, but they handle it well, I don't think you can be too disappointed. But yeah, I see what you're saying about, this may be a small window, and I'd love to see the Predators take advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ann, I guess the next time we'll be seeing each other is after game 1. So, I guess we have a playoff game to look forward to this weekend. Again, Nashville Predators are going to take on Vancouver on Sunday night. So be back here with us Monday morning for some recap for Predators versus Canucks game 1. We'll have a lot to get into over the next little bit. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Every single day. Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast what it is. And we'll see us for some playoff talk next week, folks. We'll see you then.